Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to be looking at cutting interviews within DaVinci Resolve, and specifically around the workflow that I like to use and keyboard shortcuts that I like to use when it comes to efficiently cutting interviews. If you're a documentary editor or a commercial editor that is cutting down a lot of interviews, the main thing that you want to do is try and create a really efficient way of working to process the huge amount of raw footage that we have to deal with on a daily basis. For me, I've refined this process for my workflow, and so there might be some tips and tricks that you might take away from this video, hopefully. Now, I use a Mac computer, so I've got the Apple keyboard here with the numpad on the right. I see a lot of editors just using the shorter Apple keyboard, and for me, the numpad is just a really great addition. It also frees up the arrow keys from the main keyboard here, so I'm not having to, squeeze my fingers into the arrow keys on the shorter keyboard. So I love the longer form keyboard. I like the low profile, and I like the fact that it's wireless just to declutter the desk. And then I also use the Stream Deck. I won't be talking too much about the Stream Deck today. That's a completely different video. But this Stream Deck profile will be available for you to download, as well as my custom keyboard mapping or keyboard customization preset within DaVinci Resolve. So they can be found in the description of this video. So the first thing that we want to do is obviously get the footage into a new timeline and start working. Before we do that, if we hit Command K, it'll bring up the keyboard customization, and you'll see here over in the top right, my custom preset or my custom keyboard shortcuts that you can download. Once you've downloaded that file, you can hit the three-dot menu item and hit import preset, navigate to that file, and once you've imported it, everything that I will be using in this video, you'll be able to follow along. Okay, so up here in the media pool, I have 3 interview clips. We're just going to be working on this one here. The first shortcut will be Shift Option Command T, and that'll bring up a Create New Timeline dialog box. I'll just rename this Interview String Out. Hit Enter. That'll create a new timeline for that interview. Backslash will allow me to see the full timeline. So if I'm zoomed in all the way in here, I can just hit backslash and it'll bring me back to the full timeline. If I hold Shift and scroll down, it's just going to allow me to view the waveform and the video a little bit clearer. What I will do before we start is just right click and change the track to mono. And then once I've done that, I'm basically good to go. The rest of the time, I'm not going to use the mouse or the pen tablet at all. I'm just going to use keyboard shortcuts on the keyboard. So it really allows me to zone into the interview without taking my hands constantly off and clicking a mouse and right clicking and doing all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to throw some headphones on so I can listen in to the interview with you guys. The first thing we'll do is J, K, and L navigation. L moves the playhead forward. J moves the playhead back. Also, you'll notice I'm hitting minus and plus a lot, or the equals key and the dash key. Equals zooms in and the dash zooms out of the timeline. So if I zoom all the way in and then hit the backslash key, again, I'm back to square one. Now, when I'm editing interviews, I'm most of the time just focusing on the waveform. And so I do like to zoom in a little bit to see the detail of the waveform as the playhead is moving forward.
And some Weetabix and then some toast and a coffee.
For example, right there, I can see that the waveform comes to a close, so I know that that is the end of his sentence. And then this blank space here, I know that that is obviously a question or some other downtime where the talent is not actually saying anything. So waveform is a really great way to edit interviews and quickly process your footage. So with the J, K, and L keys, if I hit L, I'm playing forward. If I hit L again or twice, it'll play at 2 times speed. If I hit it again, it'll be 4 times, 8 times, 16 times, and 32 times. So you can just hit that L key as many times as you want to really speed up the playhead, and then J does the exact with the reverse. So this is playing 16 times speed backwards. If I want to get back to the start of the timeline, I'm going to hit Control, comma, and then Control full stop will take me to the end of the timeline. If I zoom out, you'll see this. So this is the start. This is the end of the timeline. If I zoom back in, I can also navigate through edit points by hitting Shift and J and L. So Shift L will take me to the next edit point down the timeline, and Shift J will take me to the previous edit point. For example, if I just put a ton of edits in here, I can hit Shift J to navigate through those edits and Shift L. So it's a really great way of quickly navigating through your timeline and the edits that you've made. If I want to delete a section, I can hit D, which will enable the clip or select the clip, and then E will remove the clip. So D and E. If I don't want to ripple delete, which this is a ripple delete here, where it deletes the clips and ripples everything to the right of the clip backwards. If I don't want that, I can simply hit D to select and then delete, which keeps the gap intact. If I don't want the gap, I can also hit D to select the gap, and E will ripple delete the gap away. Another great little tip is if you do have a ton of gaps on your timeline, for example, if we just create a couple of gaps here, and I'll just do one more. If we've got a bunch of gaps like that, all I need to hit is the actual delete key, which is a secondary delete key over here on the larger keyboard, and you'll see what that does. It's ripple deleted every single gap on the timeline, which is an awesome way to quickly compress the timeline down if you have unnecessary gaps. So again, you can see here all those gaps simply disappear. So I will actually quickly just delete all of these. And you can see I'm still not using the mouse for any of these actions. So I have full control over doing anything within the timeline just with my keyboard shortcuts. So let's listen through this interview and we'll start breaking it down a little bit. Okay, the first thing I'll do is I'm going to give this clip a color. We'll make it yellow. It's actually a piece of the interview that I might use. It's called a noddy or a funny moment, something that I might like to cut away, but it's not actually content that I will use in the story. I've just labeled it yellow so I know for later that I can refer back to it.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah.
Just remove this first little piece.
Cool. So, thanks for that. First of all, can you start by introducing yourself, your job title?
There's a couple of ways you can work. You can hit R to make an edit, and then you can go back and hit D and then E to ripple delete the previous section. Or you can just simply hit Q, which will ripple delete everything to the left of the playhead to the nearest edit point. Or W will ripple delete everything to the right of the playhead to the nearest edit point. So you'll notice here, if I hit W, it'll make a cut. It'll basically select this clip, ripple delete that clip away. So instead of doing those three actions, you could simply just hit W and it will ripple delete, and Q will ripple delete to the left. So I'm always using Q and W as I'm editing.
Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director of TreeTech Specialist Tree Care, and we're here working in Nelson with Civil Defence and doing some helicopter work. And planes here, so you want to do that again? Perfect, I'll look at you. Yeah.
So I'm listening through, making edits. As I'm listening through 4x speed here, I can still make cuts, as you can see there. Okay, couple of things here. This section I don't need, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And then these two sections here are the intro, or two different takes of the intro. So now I'm going to start introducing markers into the timeline. I'm going to hit M to create a new marker, Command A to select all of the text, delete it, and I'll just hit introduction. Hit enter, and then I'm going to navigate by hitting Shift L back to where I left off and listen in again.
Don't ask me to do it again. Just in general, what does your business do?
Cool, so this is another good little noddy moment. So again, I'm just going to hit D to select the clip. On my Stream Deck, I have a preset. I can label this any color I want really quickly just using the Stream Deck. Control F deselects the clip. So if you've got a clip selected, you don't want it selected, Control F. Shift L again, back to where I started, and I'm going to continue.
What does your business do? What is your business name? What does your business do in general? So, TreeTech Specialist Tree Care, we are arborists. We look after the urban forest throughout cities and Christchurch.
So as I'm listening, I caught that the question before the interview was, what does TreeTech do? So again, I'm just making another marker, hit enter, and I can carry on.
We are arborists. We travel abroad, and we also do emergency works like earthquake and slips and flooding. Yeah. So.
Nice.
Yep.
And can you tell me about today? What is about to happen today?
Yeah, so today is pretty much 5 standing trees. Today's pretty helicopters, and they're helping us, assist us removing a whole lot of trees. There's 5 standing trees and 3 trees that have fallen over, caused by a big slip in the rains last week. So we're going to have a big day with a lot of crew and a lot of people here. We've got road closures, so everybody's pitching in and just trying to help the Nelson community get back into normality.
Okay, so another marker here. What is happening today? And
yeah, so today...
Shift L, take me back to where I left off to carry on. So you'll notice that I'm never actually listening to the interview at real speed. I'm always trying to listen through at 2 times or 4 times speed because I simply just don't want to waste my time. At this stage of editing an interview, I'm not really too concerned about the nitty-gritty of the content. I'm just trying to do broad brushstrokes to refine it as quick as I possibly can and sort of categorize the footage. You'll notice over on the left-hand side of the edit here, I've created an edit index, which is a representation of all the markers. And it's basically a running story of what's happening in the interview. If we continue, I'm going to ripple delete this section backwards.
Okay, so the steps today to get this job achieved by the end of the day is we're going to have to get some road closures so we can fly a helicopter over the roads and into the park to dump our debris. We're going to have our arborists climb. They're going to piece down and strop every tree up, and we're going to piece them down as a helicopter.
Okay, so this is like, what is the process?
And this job is pretty unique to what you do, right?
So for the question, I'm not too worried about listening to the question either because I was fortunately part of shooting this, so I kind of understand what's happening already. So when I get to those sections here, for example this, I'm just trying to speed through that as quick as possible, and so I'm hitting the L key 4 times to play it through at least 16 or 32 times the speed. When I get to the start of the next answer, I'll just hit K to stop and then L straight away to keep playing. For example, like this.
Yeah, so this is a really cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a really cool experience having a Black Hawk helicopter. There's lots more rotor downwash. Like, yeah, it's quite windy up there. The guys are climbing in there and getting thrown around a little. But our guys are really experienced. They've been doing this for 10, 15 years, most of them, and so they're really enjoying it. Yeah, so it's a good job for them.
Cool. So this is Black Hawk, sort of the intro. Rotor downwash was a keyword.
In what way? And what?
If you do want to refine where the playhead is, if you're making an edit, for example, if you hit K here and you're like, oh, I'm not quite where I want to be, then you can introduce the arrow keys. So left arrow and right arrow, and that'll jump 1 frame either way. Ripple delete, carry on.
So the slip, you want to talk about slip? Yeah.
So I don't need that, ripple out.
Yeah, so on the property, yeah, so on the property there's been a big slip, so obviously there's been water has washed the rock and debris and soil away. We're standing there and growing there, and there's 5 other trees that have been really damaged there with the root systems, and we're worried about them falling over, so yeah, we've had to remove those as well.
Someone wondering, like, why can't you just chop it up into small, they can't see it, so why can't you just chop it up into small pieces or get a crane? Why do you need a helicopter to come in and take care of this?
So this was a real tricky one to carry out. We couldn't get a crane in because of the stability of the road and the land around it, so we had to do something that was quite dynamic, and using a helicopter is a lot safer. It takes larger bits than what we could get.
So complex project. Helicopter is safer.
So, yeah, so using a helicopter is a lot quicker. So so using a helicopter is a lot quicker. So it's been really good. So we've completed removing the trees and the debris in a day. We've just now got to get the root balls out tomorrow. So over a 2-day period, we will have restored back to normal. People will be able to transfer and go through to their properties and up the road and in their driveway. So it's quite good. Can
you tell me a little bit more about?
So hopefully you can see how quickly I can start navigating through these interviews and creating really succinct markers. And so the result of all this hard work is that you end up with a really nice edit index over on the left hand side explaining the high level what is happening in this particular interview. And then you also have highlighted a couple of cutaways or noddies or sort of funny moments which you might want to use to embellish the interview later down the track. But the main point that I'm trying to get across here is that I'm doing everything on the keyboard because it allows me to stay locked in looking at the footage, and I'm not distracted by constantly grabbing my mouse, right clicking and doing all that sort of stuff. So that's the basics. Now let's jump into a few other cool functions. Let's say I want to swap a couple of clips around. What I can do is hit D to select the clip and hold shift. I'm going to use my up and down arrows to swap that clip with the previous clip. There might be times where you just have a little word that you want to sort of shuffle through somewhere else. And I can do that using the shift key. If I hold option and up and down, it'll move the clip onto another timeline layer. If I hit X, it's going to cut the time out of the timeline. So I have copied the clip and cut it and rippled everything away. And if I want to paste that down the line somewhere, let's say I paste it in here, I can hit Z and that'll paste it in and ripple everything to the right of that new pasted clip. I'll just label this so you can see what's happening. We'll go orange. So I'm going to hit D, I'm going to ripple that out. And if I want to paste it down the end of the timeline, I can just drop it in there. Another really cool feature, particularly on the Stream Deck, is I can just hit this one little button, which will select all clips with the color yellow. So let's say throughout my interview, I have all of these noddies or funny moments, but I just want to pull them out of the timeline and put them at the end of the timeline. What I can do is select all clips with that yellow clip color, hit X to ripple them out of the timeline, go to the end of my timeline and hit Z. And now I've pasted them in at the end and I can just hit delete key to compress all of the gaps. Now I have a really nice section at the end of theoretically all of the funny moments. Now what's really important with all of this is simply just to have control over your timeline. So if there's things that you want to do that you have to reach for the mouse, try and figure out if there's a way that you can do that with a keyboard shortcut, because again, it just allows you to be locked in to the timeline. Another way to cycle through the timeline is Command M and Option M. Now what this is going to do is cycle through the markers. So Command M goes left and Option M goes forward. So if you have a bunch of markers throughout your timeline, it's a really great way to navigate through your timeline quickly. If I want to change the note on the marker, I can simply hit M again, update the note. I can go additional notes here, hit enter, and then now I've updated that note. One thing I do a lot when I'm editing B-roll is there'll be a section of video
I'm pretty sure we've got most of what I need.
that is just best suited to be reversed, or if there's a speed change. So what I can do is select this clip, hit Shift G to bring up change clip speed. Now I can hit 200 and play this clip back at 200%.
I'm pretty sure we've got most of what I need.
And if I want to take it back to real time, I can just go back to 100% and move on. So as mentioned, that these are quite broad brushstroke movements within the timeline. I'll show you how I would sort of process refining or compressing this interview sync.
Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director of Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care, and we're here working in Nelson with Civil Defence and doing some helicopter work. Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch, and I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopters. Kahu Helicopters.
Okay, so there was a bit of noise in the background, so I'll remove those sections. Got the intro
Hi,
here.
I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch, and I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopters, and we have been doing some tree removal work on a slip that was caused in the floods last week. So Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care, we are arborists. We look after the urban forest throughout. So Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care, we are arborists. We look after the urban forest throughout cities. And
this is a good example. So there's lots of ums and ahs. Let's say I wanted to take all of them out and compress the A-roll sync a little.
Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care,
So I'm using the arrow keys now to refine the exact frame that I want to cut at. Hit R for cut.
We are arborists.
Let's try and cut the R out.
We are arborists. We look after the urban forest throughout cities in Christchurch and Wellington. We travel abroad. Cities in Christchurch and Wellington.
Okay, listen to this.
So Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care, we are arborists. We look after the urban forest.
So let's say I want to fine tune these little edits that I've made. What I could do is use my keyboard shortcuts down here, which I've set up on my Stream Deck. I cycle through to this edit point, select the edit point, and now use my comma and full stop keys to fine tune this edit.
Arborists, we look after we are arborists. arborists.
And I'm just going to ripple this one down.
We are arborists. We look after.
Let's try one more frame.
Yeah, we are arborists. We look after the urban.
Okay, let's listen to this.
So tree tech specialist tree care. We are arborists. We look after the urban forest throughout cities in Christchurch and Wellington.
Going to get rid of these.
We travel abroad, and we also do emergency works like we also do
That's important there.
And we also do emergency works like earthquake and slips and flooding. Flooding.
Maybe we'll keep the end.
Flooding. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's listen to this now.
So tree tech specialist tree care. We are arborists. We look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works. We also do arborists. We look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake and slips and flooding. Yeah, so today is...
Okay, and now all of these are secondary thoughts. So I can hit A to select everything to the right of the playhead. And then I can move this by hitting Shift full stop. And you'll see that this is moving all of these clips to the right. Now what I have is a nice succinct intro.
Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch, and I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopters. So Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care,
What I'm going to do is get rid of this so. I use the V and the B keys to cycle between the trim edit and then the standard selection tool. If I have the trim edit tool enabled, you'll see if I ripple delete by hitting W, it actually does ripple delete. But if I use the standard selection mode and I ripple, you'll notice that it doesn't actually ripple. It just deletes to the right of the playhead without rippling. So I cycle between V and B a lot for those two different tools.
And I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services. And
in this case, when I'm removing that word so, here, I can hit V and then hit Q, which will give me a gap without actually compressing the sync.
And I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopter, Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care.
Okay, obviously something's happened here, so I'm going to select that edit point again, and I'm going to hit B, which is the trim selection tool, and I'm just going to increase that.
And we're
helicopters. There, I think that'll be
Kahu Helicopters. Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care. We are arborists. We look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake and slips and flooding.
You'll notice there are different types of edits on the timeline as well. This edit here to the right of the playhead has a perforated line, and that simply means that an edit has been made, but there actually isn't any change to the original clip. So I can just click the shortcut on my Stream Deck to select that edit point, and I'm just going to hit delete to remove that false cut, which is another one here, and then another one here.
And flooding.
The more you use your keyboard shortcuts, the more it becomes second nature, and then the flow just increases. So let's listen in to what we've got so far.
Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch, and I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopters. Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care. We are arborists. We look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake, slips and flooding.
I'm just noticing here that at this edit point, I want to create a little bit of space and decompress that sync a little bit. What you could obviously do, again, is grab the mouse and select all of these and move them to the right. You could select them and then move them to the right using Shift full stop. Or what you could do if you're in a flow on the keyboard and you just want to continue with your keyboard shortcuts is create space by ripple moving this edit point. So I'm going to give it space about there. Then I'm actually going to hit R to make a cut, D and delete. Now I've created space between those two clips by rippling everything to the right of the playhead and pushing it down.
Arborists, we look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake, slip.
Now the gap's a little bit too much, so there's a couple of things I could do. But what I will do is just hit I and O, and that is setting an in and out point on the timeline, and I'm going to hit X just to cut out that space between the in and out points. So I've compressed that gap a little bit.
Arborists, we look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake, slips and flooding.
Let's listen to it one more time and then we'll move on.
Hi, I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch, and I'm here today with Nelson Tree Services and Kahu Helicopters. Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care, we are arborists, we look after the urban forest. We also do emergency works like earthquake, slips and flooding.
Alrighty, so that's a whole bunch of shortcuts that I use to navigate the timeline. There are many more that I use all the time, but that is for another video. To end, I'm just going to give you a couple of extra bonus shortcuts that I've set up. I like to hit Control Option Command and then use my number keys to go through the different modules within DaVinci. For example, if I just want to jump over to Fairlight really quick, I can choose Control Option Command 6 to get to Fairlight, Control Option Command 1 for the media, 2 for cut, 3 for edit, 4 for fusion, 5 for color, and then obviously 7 for delivery. Also, while I'm on the timeline, if I do want to dim the audio, if there is something else I'm paying attention to, I can just hit the minus key on the numpad on the keyboard, which you'll see here.
I'm Chris Walsh. I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree.
So minus just dims the audio, and then if I click it again, it boosts the audio back up.
Services and Kahu Helicopters.
And then sometimes as I'm looking at a bunch of B-roll footage, I'm sort of trying to figure out the sweet spot of the aspect ratio. Now, obviously you can change the aspect ratio in the timeline settings, but what I can also do is use output blanking and cycle through the different options. So I've set them up by hitting Control and then 1 through 7 will give me my different output blankings on the timeline viewer. So 0 is obviously off, Control 0. Control 7 is the 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio, and then there's a varying range of different options all the way through. So often I just hit Control 7 just to sort of see what that would look like
Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care,
in a cinema aspect ratio.
We look after the urban forest.
Control 0 will take it down. Let's say I did want to lock in that aspect ratio. What I can do is hit F to bring up the timeline in my media pool, which you can see up here. Now, once I hit F and have the interview string out selected in the media pool, I can hit Shift Control Option Command T. So all of the modifier keys to bring up the timeline settings, and then you can use a custom timeline resolution. This case, let's go 239 or 2048 by 858 for a 239 crop. And then I can select all of these and then go down here to retime and scale and then hit fill. So now I have a 2:3:9 aspect ratio timeline.
I'm the Managing Director from Tree Tech Specialist Tree Care in Christchurch.
And I know that that's going to work because I use my output blanking just to test that out. Okay, so there you have it. I hope you're inspired to start working through your own keyboard shortcuts. The statement that I'd love you to keep in mind as you're editing is the question, is there a faster way to do the thing that I just did? As you're editing, if you find yourself doing the same repetitive action, especially with the mouse or your pen tablet, depending on how you work, then I guarantee you'll be faster and more efficient if you figure out a keyboard shortcut for that thing. The more time you spend on the keyboard and force yourself to only use the keyboard to navigate through the timeline as you're editing, the faster and more efficient you will be. So hopefully that inspired you. If you do have any questions, please sing out. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment box below. I'll try and answer every single question that you do have. And don't forget, in the description of this video, you can download my keyboard shortcuts and my Stream Deck profile if you want to follow along. That's it for now. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.